To understand what we mean by the human soul is to necessarily have to understand a little bit of mathematics and a little bit of evolution. So hold with me here. If our souls were handed down from other generations, let's say one person dies and their soul goes into another person. Sounds fine, kind of, but if that's the case, and right now we have many more human beings on the planet than have ever been in the planet in past, where have those souls come from? So if this soul went to that human, where did this other human get their soul from if it didn't come from another person? Or did that soul split and go off into multiple people? In which case, what happened when a soul split? It doesn't make any sense for a soul to be transferred from one generation to another because there are simply more people on the planet now than there were before. So that's the math. We can't have souls because they can't be handed down by our parents either. Because if our parents handed us down our souls, then which part of which parent gave us our soul? Or did they come together to form a new unique soul? Well, that kind of would make sense, but then it says that the human soul came from procreation. And if it came from procreation, it's made up of genes, in which case it means that when we die, the soul dies as well. It must die with it, because whatever was created during conception, also will die at the same time. So it can't be that either. Did the human soul come magically from evolution? So we've just evolved to have a soul through our genes. Well, if that's the case, then which was the first human to have had a soul? And if that human had a soul and their parents didn't, what does that mean? Are they a different species, a different being altogether? Or did that first person have a little bit of soul, which means that you could have a reducible soul? There are bigger souls and smaller souls. Well, we don't look at souls that way, do we? In evolution, things have progressed gradually over time. Our eyes gradually got better. Our hearing gradually got better. We gradually lost certain limbs, the ability to climb trees, the bent thumb. We lost some things, we gained some things, and they just went over a long period of time. At what point would the soul have come in? And does that mean that all human ancestors were soulless creatures? I don't think that's the case either. It just doesn't make sense. Now, if you don't have a soul, does that make it a dark, lifeless, horrible existence? Well, of course not. You see, where the concept of a soul has come from, which is the same as all other things that we didn't know, it's come from lack of knowledge. In the past, we didn't understand so many things about human beings. Like, for example, we would say someone who back in the 1800s had what we would now call schizophrenia, we would say they've got a troubled soul. What would that mean? It just means that it's something they can't describe or explain just because of the science. So they assign the word soul to it. And we did the same with religions and with gods. There was a god of the ocean, and then we understood how the ocean worked, so the god of the ocean disappeared. It's the same concept. Whatever we didn't understand, we put into the supernatural. And it was supernatural because it wasn't some natural thing that we could explain. So it was super to that. But now, as we're moving along and understanding more and more of the human brain, we know schizophrenia is a chemical imbalance. We know that certain other disorders are completely explainable, not curable, but explainable. So we don't assign there are less and less unknown that we would assign to what we would call the soul. So its space in our lives is starting to diminish to the point where there'll be very little space left for the soul. So then what? Well, then we have a life and an understanding of ourselves that's so much more enlightened. We actually know what it is that makes us tick, and we can live a better life. We can tap into our inner reserves because we understand more about each other and about ourselves. I think that's a much more enlightened way to go. And this is where the term enlightened comes from. The people who can move away from hanging on to the unknown are considered to be enlightened, and not because they're brighter or anything like that. It's simply because they understand more. So the more you let that knowledge come into yourself, the less you're going to depend on the unknown, and the better and bigger life you can have helping others and doing your life's work.